My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the blinking cursor mocking me with every second of silence. I had been sitting at my desk for hours, staring at a blank document, waiting for inspiration that refused to come. Writer's block had become my constant companion, a shadow looming over my ambition. I sighed and pushed my chair back, rubbing my temples. Maybe I wasn't meant to be a writer. Maybe all those years of dreaming, of crafting stories in my head, were nothing more than childish fantasies. Reality was setting in, rent was due, my savings were thinning, and the rejection emails from publishers kept piling up. The air in my apartment felt stifling, heavy with failure. I needed a change of scenery. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. The autumn wind bit at my skin as I walked aimlessly through the city streets, the golden leaves crunching underfoot. The world moved around me, cars honking, people chatting, the distant sound of a street musician playing a somber tune. I envied them, their purpose, their momentum. After what felt like hours, I found myself in an unfamiliar part of town. The buildings here were older, their brick facades weathered with time. A narrow alleyway caught my eye, tucked between two towering structures, and at the end of it, a flickering neon sign read, Bellamy's Rare Books. I had never seen this bookstore before, and I had been living in the city for years. Curiosity nudged me forward. Maybe an old book would spark something, an idea, a sentence, anything to break this creative drought. A bell jingled softly as I stepped inside. The scent of aged paper and dust filled my lungs, a strangely comforting aroma. Rows of towering bookshelves lined the dimly lit space, their wooden frames creaking under the weight of forgotten stories. It was the kind of place that felt untouched by time, as if it had been waiting for me. Behind the counter sat an old man, his silver-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose as he flipped through a tattered book. He looked up as I approached, his eyes sharp despite his frail appearance. Looking for something in particular, he asked, his voice raspy yet warm. I'm not sure, I admitted. I just needed to clear my head. He nodded knowingly and gestured toward the shelves. Books have a way of finding the right people. Take your time. I wandered through the aisles, running my fingers along the spines of books worn with age. Some had titles in languages I didn't recognize, others bore no titles at all. And then, on the bottom shelf of a neglected corner, I saw it. A manuscript. It was different from the others, no leather binding, no gilded lettering. Just a stack of yellowed pages held together by a frayed string. There was no title, no author's name, only a strange, uneasy feeling that settled in my chest as I reached for it. The moment my fingers touched the cover, a whisper of air rustled through the bookstore, though no windows were open. I shivered. I brought it to the counter, holding it up. What's this? The old man peered over his glasses, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought I saw something. Hesitation? Recognition? But then he simply nodded. That one's special, he said. No charge. Consider it a gift. I frowned. Are you sure? He slid the manuscript toward me. Some stories need to be told. Just be careful, young writer. Some stories don't like to be changed. A chill ran down my spine at his words, but I dismissed it as theatrics. Maybe he was just trying to add mystery to an old book. I thanked him and left, the bell chiming softly behind me. As I walked home, I turned the manuscript over in my hands. There was something unsettling about it, something in the way it felt, as if the pages were pulsing with an unseen energy. But I shook the thought away. It was just an old manuscript, a relic of another time. Still, I couldn't shake the old man's warning. Some stories don't like to be changed. When I got back to my apartment, the manuscript sat on my desk, staring at me, daring me to open it. I hesitated. Why? I had read countless manuscripts before. This was no different. With a deep breath, I untied the frayed string and carefully turned the first page. The ink was faded, the handwriting elegant yet eerily familiar. And then I saw the first sentence. He sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, staring at a manuscript he had just brought home, debating whether to turn the page. I froze. My eyes darted around the room, half expecting to see someone watching me. The description, it was too perfect. Too exact. I swallowed hard and continued reading. The manuscript described me in vivid detail. It mentioned my writer's block, my aimless walk through the city, finding the bookstore. Every moment, every thought, perfectly transcribed as if the writer had been with me the entire time. Goosebumps prickled my arms. This had to be a prank. A joke. Maybe the old man had written this before I arrived. But how? He hadn't known I would come. Had he? I turned the page, my hands trembling. Then I saw the next passage. His breath quickened as he read these words, realizing the manuscript knew him better than he knew himself. He wanted to stop reading, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he saw what would happen next. A sharp knock at the door made me jump. I snapped the manuscript shut, my heart hammering. Another knock. I hesitated, then slowly stood and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw nothing. No one. Just the empty hallway stretching into darkness. A shiver crawled down my spine. I turned back to my desk, glancing at the manuscript. It lay there, waiting for me to turn the page. And against my better judgment, I did. My hands trembled as I turned the next page. The words stared back at me, inked in careful, deliberate strokes. He turned the page, unable to resist the pull of the story that seemed to be writing itself around him. A cold chill settled over my shoulders, the kind that no amount of warmth could chase away. I exhaled, trying to steady my nerves. This had to be a coincidence, some elaborate trick my mind was playing on me. Yet I kept reading. The manuscript recounted my life in unnerving detail. The schools I attended, the stories I had tried to write, the failures that piled up like dead leaves in autumn. It described my late-night frustration, the countless times I had stared at a blank screen, begging for inspiration. And then it went further. Even now, as he reads these words, he sits in his apartment, his desk lamp casting long shadows against the wall. His mind races, searching for explanations. But there are none. Not yet. My breath hitched. I turned my head, glancing at the wall. The shadows stretched and swayed in the soft glow of the lamp exactly as described. This wasn't possible. I jumped up from my chair, pacing the room. My mind reeled, cycling through explanations, coincidence, déjà vu, an incredibly specific case of literary fate. Maybe it was some kind of old psychological trick. Maybe subconsciously I was forcing myself to play along with the words on the page. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. The manuscript knew things. Things no one else could possibly know. And I had no idea how. I turned back to the desk and forced myself to keep reading. The next passage made my blood turn to ice. Tomorrow he will wake to find his apartment door unlocked, though he swore he bolted it before bed. A single red thread will be waiting on the floor as if left there deliberately. He will dismiss it at first, convincing himself he simply forgot. But deep down, he will know better. I slammed the manuscript shut. That was enough. I couldn't read any more tonight. Pacing the room, I ran my fingers through my hair, trying to steady my thoughts. It was just a book. A strange, unsettling book, but still just a book. I stuffed it into the bottom drawer of my desk and locked it. Out of sight. Out of mind. With that, I crawled into bed, pulling the blankets up to my chin. Sleep came in restless waves, my mind haunted by thoughts of inked pages and impossible words. The next morning, I woke groggy, my head pounding from a night of uneasy dreams. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting golden patterns across the room. I pushed the covers off and sat up, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. A nagging sense of unease clung to me, but I brushed it off. It was a new day. Then I noticed my apartment door. Slightly open. My stomach dropped. I knew for a fact I had locked it last night. I always did. Heart hammering, I swung my legs over the bed and padded toward the door. The lock was unlatched, the deadbolt slid open. I swallowed hard. A cold breeze drifted through the hallway, and that was when I saw it. A single red thread, lying on the floor just inside the doorway. Exactly as the manuscript had said. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I bent down and picked up the thread, turning it over in my fingers. It was thin, delicate, frayed at the ends as if torn from fabric. I forced myself to think rationally. Maybe I had forgotten to lock the door last night. Maybe the thread had always been there and I was just noticing it now because of the manuscript's suggestion. That had to be it. Had to be. Still gripping the thread, I marched back to my desk, yanked open the drawer, and retrieved the manuscript. I hesitated only a second before flipping the page, my pulse pounding in my ears. The next passage sent a fresh wave of terror down my spine. He will hold the red thread in his hands, trying to explain it away. He will tell himself it means nothing, that it's a coincidence. But as he reads these words, he will hear the first knock at his door. Knock. I nearly dropped the book. The sound echoed through the apartment, slow, deliberate. Knock. Knock. I sucked in a shaky breath. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Another knock. I turned my head toward the door, my skin crawling. Someone was there. Or something. Slowly, I set the manuscript down and forced myself to stand. My legs felt weak beneath me as I approached the door. Through the peephole, I saw nothing. No one. Just the empty hallway stretching into the morning light. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the doorknob, every instinct screaming at me not to open it. Then, as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. Silence settled over the apartment, thick and suffocating. I took a step back, my breathing ragged. I needed to get out of here. Slipping on my jacket, I stuffed the manuscript into my bag. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed air. I needed distance. The moment I stepped outside, the city felt different. The streets were familiar, yet something was off, subtle, almost imperceptible. It was as if the world had shifted slightly, the angles not quite right. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself and kept walking, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. That was when I saw him. A man stood across the street, partially obscured by the shadow of a building. He was watching me. I couldn't see his face. Something about him felt wrong. Then he stepped back into the shadows and was gone. A cold sense of dread settled deep in my bones. I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep moving. I needed answers. And the only place I knew to start was the bookstore. I walked quickly, my fingers gripping the strap of my bag as if the manuscript inside might try to escape. The city bustled around me, cars honked, pedestrians weaved past, conversations buzzed through the air, but I felt separate from it all. Disconnected. The man I had seen was gone, but the feeling of being watched hadn't left me. It clung to me like a second skin. I turned a corner, and there it was. Bellamy's Rare Books. The neon sign flickered faintly, just as it had the night before. The bookstore stood nestled between two buildings, its dark wooden door looking older than the city itself. I hesitated for only a second before stepping inside. The familiar scent of aged paper and dust greeted me, but something was different. The air was heavier. The shop was silent, too silent. The warmth from the dimly lit lamps failed to chase away the eerie chill creeping down my spine. I walked toward the counter. The old man Bellamy, I assumed, was there, just as before. He sat hunched over a book, his silver-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose. His frail fingers traced the pages, moving as if following words unseen by anyone else. He didn't look up. I cleared my throat. "Excuse me." "Nothing." I stepped closer. "Sir?" Slowly he lifted his head. His eyes met mine, and for the first time I noticed how pale they were, almost colorless. Like he had seen too much of the world and had been left hollow because of it. "You've read it," he said. I stiffened. "What?" "The manuscript." He nodded toward my bag. "You've read it, haven't you?" I hesitated. "How did you know?" Bellamy sighed, rubbing his temples as if the weight of my question was too much to bear. "Because you came back." A beat of silence passed between us. Then he gestured to the chair beside the counter. "Sit. We need to talk." I hesitated but obeyed, lowering myself onto the old wooden chair. Bellamy leaned forward, folding his hands. "Tell me what you've seen." I swallowed. It knows things. About me. About my life. It predicted my morning, down to the smallest details. Even the red thread. Bellamy's expression darkened. "The red thread. So it's begun." My heart skipped a beat. "What's begun?" He exhaled slowly. "That manuscript isn't an ordinary book. It doesn't tell just any story, it tells your story. But it doesn't just record the past, it writes the future." I felt my stomach twist. "That's not possible." "And yet here you are," Bellamy said, tapping a finger against the counter. "Tell me, have you reached the ending yet?" I shook my head. "No." I stopped reading after it predicted the knocking. Bellamy nodded, a hint of relief crossing his face. "Good. That means you still have a chance." "A chance at what?" I demanded. "What happens at the end?" His gaze flickered toward the manuscript. "Death." The word hit me like a hammer to the chest. Bellamy continued, his voice quieter now. "The manuscript doesn't just tell your life story. It traps you in it. The moment you reach the final page, your fate is sealed. Whatever is written there will happen. No exceptions." A cold sweat formed at the nape of my neck. "But I can change it, right? If I make different choices. If I do something unexpected." Bellamy shook his head. "It's not that simple. The more you fight it, the harder it pulls you back in. Every attempt to alter the story only brings you closer to the ending written for you." I thought of the red thread, of the knocking at my door, of the man who had been watching me. Had I already triggered something I couldn't stop? Bellamy's voice softened. "Listen to me. You need to stop reading. Lock it away. Burn it if you can. The only way to break free is to refuse the story." I clutched the bag tightly. "And if I don't?" Bellamy's expression turned grim. "Then it will keep writing. And when you reach the last page." He let the words hang in the air. A sharp gust of wind rattled the windows, making me jump. The door creaked slightly, though no one had entered. Bellamy glanced toward it, his jaw tightening. "You're running out of time," he murmured. A deep sense of dread settled in my chest. I needed to destroy the manuscript. Now, as I left the bookstore, the wind howled through the alleyway. The city felt different again, colder, more hollow. I walked quickly, my bag clutched against my side like a lifeline. Bellamy's warning echoed in my head. Burn it. Destroy it. But as I turned the corner onto my street, I froze. The door to my apartment was wide open, and inside, the lights flickered erratically, like something was waiting. A whisper of air rustled past me, though no one was there. I wasn't alone. I took a step back, and then, from inside my apartment, I heard the unmistakable sound of pages turning. Someone was reading the manuscript. I stood frozen at the threshold of my apartment, my breath shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. The manuscript was inside, and someone or something was reading it. The soft rustling of pages echoed through the stillness. My mouth felt dry, my thoughts a tangled mess. Bellamy's words came back to me. The more you fight it, the harder it pulls you back in. But I couldn't just stand here. I had to know who was inside. Slowly, I stepped forward, my foot hesitating just before crossing the threshold. A whisper of cold air snaked around my ankles, seeping through the doorway like something unseen had been expecting me. I pushed forward. The lights flickered wildly as I entered. My apartment, once familiar and safe, now felt wrong, distorted, as if I had stepped into a version of it that wasn't quite real. Then I saw it. The manuscript sat open on my desk, its pages fluttering on their own. No wind. No hands turning them. Just the book, alive. I swallowed hard, my every instinct screaming at me to leave. But something compelled me forward. I inched toward the desk, my fingers trembling as I reached for the manuscript. The pages stopped flipping. The words on the page stared back at me, freshly inked, as if someone had just written them. He will reach for the manuscript, ignoring the warning signs. He will pick it up, believing he can control it. But as his fingers brush the pages, he will feel the presence watching him. Waiting. A shiver crept up my spine. I turned my head slowly. The shadows in the farthest corner of the room twisted unnaturally, stretching, shifting. A shape began to emerge, tall, hunched, humanoid but wrong. Its limbs were too long, its movements jagged like a marionette controlled by unseen strings. A sharp intake of breath escaped me. The figure didn't step forward, but I felt it watching. I clutched the manuscript to my chest and staggered backward. My brain screamed for me to run, to get out, but my body refused to move. Then, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. My breath hitched, my muscles locking in place. The silence was suffocating. Then, just inches from my ear, a whisper. A voice not spoken aloud, but inside my mind. Keep reading. I bolted. I didn't stop running until I reached the street. My lungs burned, my vision blurred. I had no idea where I was going, just away. Away from whatever was in that room. Away from the manuscript. But as I turned a corner, my foot caught on something. I stumbled forward, barely catching myself before hitting the pavement. My pulse pounded as I looked down. There, at my feet. A single red thread. No. No. I backed away, my mind spinning. Had I really escaped? Or had I just stepped further into the story? The manuscript. It had told me this would happen. I forced a shaky breath, gripping my head. I needed to end this. Destroy the book. Burn it, drown it, whatever it took. But deep down, I already knew the truth. It wouldn't let me. I had already lost control. I had already turned the next page. And the story wasn't finished yet. I don't remember how I got back to my apartment. My legs carried me on instinct, my mind a chaotic blur of fear and confusion. The manuscript was still clutched in my hands, its weight growing heavier as if it knew I was thinking about destroying it. As I stepped into my building, a dreadful silence hung in the air. No distant voices from my neighbors. No hum of the elevator. Even the city sounds outside seemed muffled. Everything felt paused. I hesitated at my apartment door. It was shut now. No signs of the figure I had seen inside. No flickering lights. Just my apartment, still and waiting. I stepped inside. The manuscript trembled slightly in my grip as if the words inside were restless. I forced myself toward the kitchen. Burn it. That was my only thought. I grabbed the matches from the drawer, my fingers fumbling as I reached for a metal pot to contain the flames. I hesitated. Would this really work? Would the book let me destroy it? There was only one way to find out. I struck a match. A small flame sparked to life. I lowered it toward the pages, my heart hammering as the fire kissed the paper. Nothing happened. The flame flickered, hovered above the page, but refused to spread. It was as if the book was rejecting the fire. A gust of cold air rushed through the kitchen, snuffing out the match. The manuscript flipped open on its own. New words formed before my eyes, ink seeping into the paper like fresh blood. He will try to burn the manuscript. He will fail. I stumbled back, my breath caught in my throat. No. This wasn't just predicting my future, it was controlling it. The room darkened. The shadows stretched unnaturally again. And then, a voice. That same whisper threading through my mind, smiling without a mouth. You can't escape the story. I ran. I didn't stop until I reached Bellamy's bookstore. The neon sign flickered above me, casting an eerie glow onto the deserted street. I pounded on the door, my desperation making my fists sore. The lock clicked. The door creaked open just enough for Bellamy's pale eyes to meet mine. You read more, didn't you? He murmured. I pushed my way inside, shoving the manuscript onto the counter. It won't let me burn it. It knew I would try. Bellamy sighed, his fingers brushing the book's cover. I warned you. I gritted my teeth. Then tell me how to stop this. He studied me for a long moment, then motioned toward the back of the store. Come with me. The back room was small, lined with bookshelves stacked with ancient tomes. A single lamp cast a dim yellow glow over a cluttered wooden table. Bellamy placed the manuscript on the table and opened it carefully. I watched as his eyes scanned the pages. His face remained unreadable, but his hands trembled slightly. Finally, he exhaled. There's only one way. I leaned forward. Tell me. His gaze met mine, heavy with warning. You have to reach the last page before it writes your death. I frowned. What do you mean? Bellamy tapped the book. Right now, it's still writing. It's filling in the gaps of your future. But if you finish the story, if you reach the ending before it can write your fate, you might be able to change it. I swallowed. So, I have to outpace it. Bellamy nodded. But it won't be easy. The manuscript will try to manipulate you. It will test you. I hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap. But what choice did I have? I pulled in a shaky breath. Then I'll read. Bellamy's expression darkened. Be careful. I opened the manuscript. The ink shifted on the page, forming new words. And I began to read. The moment my eyes fell on the first line, I felt a shift in the air. The manuscript was no longer just a book, it was a living thing, responding to my gaze. Bellamy watched in silence as I turned the page. The words awaited me. He sits in the dim light of Bellamy's bookstore, the manuscript opened before him. His hands tremble, but he forces himself to read. The ink flows like fresh wounds, revealing what comes next. A chill ran down my spine. The words were forming in real time, recording my actions as I performed them. I clenched my jaw and kept reading. He will think he can change the story. But the moment he believes that, the manuscript will remind him he is only a character. And characters do not control their own fate. The lamp above us flickered. I gripped the edge of the table. It's writing as I read. How do I stop it? Bellamy's voice was low. Keep going. Get ahead of it. I flipped to the next page. The old bookseller will tell him to read faster. But he doesn't understand speed does not change destiny. The next event has already been written. My breath hitched. I didn't want to look at Bellamy. But I did. And the moment our eyes met, he stiffened because he already knew. A knock sounded at the front door of the bookstore. My pulse spiked. Bellamy's face paled. He reached out and slammed the manuscript shut. We need to leave. Now. The knock came again. Louder this time. I grabbed the manuscript, shoving it into my bag as Bellamy pulled me toward the back exit. But before we could reach the door, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed us whole. The bookstore, once filled with the warm scent of old paper and wood, now reeked of something else. Something damp. Rotten. A sound slithered through the silence. Not footsteps, something dragging. I felt Bellamy's grip tighten on my wrist. Stay close, he whispered. A single light flickered on behind us. The manuscript had somehow reopened. And new words had appeared. They will try to escape. But the story has already decided one of them will not leave this place alive. A sickening weight settled in my stomach. I turned to Bellamy, but he was already looking at me, his expression grim, resigned. He knew. Something shifted in the darkness. A tall, twisted shadow unfurled near the bookshelves, its jagged limbs barely distinguishable from the blackness around it. And then, Bellamy shoved me toward the exit. Run. I hesitated for half a second too long. The shadow moved. Bellamy let out a strangled gasp. His body jerked unnaturally, his feet lifting off the ground. The darkness wrapped around him, pulling him backward into the depths of the store. I lunged forward. Bellamy. His wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine. Finish the story, he rasped. And then, he was gone. Swallowed by the dark. The door behind me slammed open. I didn't think, I just ran. I didn't stop running until I was 3 blocks away. My heart thundered in my chest, my breath ragged. Bellamy was gone. The manuscript had predicted it, and I had done exactly what it wanted me to do. I reached into my bag, my hands shaking as I pulled out the curse book. It lay open, the ink still fresh as if it had just written the scene itself. A new line formed at the bottom of the page. He will read these words and understand this is not just a book. It is the script of his life. And the next chapter has already begun. I swallowed hard. I turned the page, and I kept reading. I sat on the cold pavement, breathless, the manuscript heavy in my hands. The ink on the pages gleamed wet under the flickering streetlights, as if the words had just been written. Bellamy was gone because the manuscript said so, and now it was writing again. He will sit on the empty street, hands trembling, grief thick in his throat. But he does not yet understand he was never meant to escape. The story does not end here. A tremor ran through me. I flipped forward, scanning the pages, searching for anything that might reveal what came next. But as I flipped faster and faster, the pages ahead were still blank. The story was waiting for me. My mind reeled. Bellamy had said I had to get ahead of the manuscript, to finish the story before it could trap me in my fate. But how? I looked at the most recent lines and my blood ran cold. He will believe he has a choice, but he does not. His next action is already written. My breath hitched. I slammed the book shut and shoved it into my bag. No, I wouldn't play its game. If I stopped reading, if I stopped acknowledging it, maybe the story would lose its grip. I needed to clear my head. A hand clamped onto my shoulder. I spun around, heart pounding. A man in a dark coat stood in the shadows, his face obscured by the dim light. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said, voice low and almost too familiar. I stepped back, pulse racing. Who? Then I saw it. The manuscript had fallen open again. New words had formed. He will meet a stranger on the empty street. He will not recognize him at first. But soon he will understand. The stranger is not a stranger at all. I looked back up, my stomach lurching. The man stepped forward, and the streetlight illuminated his face. I staggered backward. It was me. Panic flared in my chest. The man standing before me was identical to me. The same face, same eyes, same terrified expression. But there was something wrong. His movements were stiff, slightly out of sync with reality, like a puppet on invisible strings. "You have to keep reading," he said. "It's the only way out." I shook my head violently. No, this isn't real. The other me tilted his head. Isn't it? A sharp pain stabbed behind my eyes. The street warped, bending inward like a collapsing dream. My double watched me, unblinking. "You have to turn the page," he whispered. My vision blurred. I fell to my knees, clutching my head. I felt the manuscript pressing against my ribs inside my bag, pulsing like a second heartbeat. And then, I understood. The manuscript wasn't just telling the story. It was shaping reality. And now it was splitting me apart. I had to move. I had to break free before the story rewrote me. With sheer desperation, I forced myself to stand and run. I didn't look back. Not even when I heard my own voice whisper behind me, "You can't escape yourself." I reached my apartment in a haze. My hands fumbled with the keys, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The moment I stepped inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it. My body shook violently as I pressed my back against the wood. The manuscript was still in my bag. I needed to stop this. I needed to find a way to end it. I pulled the book out, forcing myself to look at the open page. He will return home, believing he can find a way to fight back. But he is wrong. The story has already chosen its ending. No, I wouldn't let this thing control me. I grabbed a pen from my desk. If the manuscript was writing my fate, then I would write back. Hands shaking, I scrawled onto the blank space beneath the words. He defies the manuscript. He takes control of the story. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the ink bled away, vanishing from the page like it had never existed. My breath caught. The book rejected my words. The manuscript pulsed violently in my hands. The pages flipped on their own, faster and faster, blurring past my vision. And then, suddenly, it stopped. The last page was no longer blank. It was filled. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I read the final lines. He will try to resist. He will try to change the ending. But the manuscript has already written its final words. And soon he will realize his story ends tonight. A chill swept through the room. The lights flickered. And behind me, the shadow moved. A presence loomed behind me. I felt it before I saw it, an unbearable cold creeping up my spine, the air in the room turning heavy, suffocating. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I clutched the manuscript, my fingers tightening around the cursed pages. The lights flickered violently. I didn't want to turn around. But the manuscript had already written my next move. He will turn to face the thing that waits for him in the dark. A deep, unnatural silence pressed against my ears. My muscles locked in place, refusing to obey the overwhelming urge to run. Then, against my will, I turned. The shadow wasn't just a shadow. It was alive. It stood in the corner of my apartment, its limbs too long, its form shifting like ink bleeding through paper. Its head tilted at an unnatural angle, faceless yet somehow watching me. And then, it moved. A spindly hand reached forward, its fingers dragging across the wooden floor, leaving behind inky black stains. The air rippled as it crept closer, its movements slow, deliberate, like it was savoring the moment. The manuscript trembled in my grip. I had to do something. I staggered back, flipping through the cursed pages with frantic desperation. There had to be something I could use, some loophole, some hint at how to stop this nightmare from unfolding. But the book had already decided. He will search for an escape, but there is none. The story is almost over. No, I choked out. I won't let this happen. The thing in the corner let out a low, distorted breath. A sound that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite real. The shadows around it writhed, swallowing the last slivers of light in the room. It knew. It knew I was running out of time. I flipped to the final page. My name stared back at me, written in bold, unyielding ink. And beneath it, a description of my death. He will die at the hands of the story. I swallowed hard. The words blurred as my mind reeled. My pulse pounded in my ears. I couldn't change the text. I couldn't rewrite what had already been written. But maybe I could stop reading. A plan formed in my mind, desperate and reckless. If the manuscript needed me to read it for the events to unfold, then what would happen if I refused? I took a step back, heart hammering. The shadow creature twitched, sensing my hesitation. I sucked in a sharp breath and snapped the manuscript shut. For the first time, silence fell. The shadow froze. The air grew unbearably still, as if the entire world was waiting. A long, painful moment stretched between us. Then, the thing let out an inhuman screech. The air rippled around it. The walls of my apartment warped, distorting like paper burning at the edges. The manuscript in my hands shook violently, as if it were trying to force itself open. I held it tighter. The shadow lunged. I ran. I crashed through my apartment door, my lungs burning as I bolted down the stairwell. My mind raced with a single, terrifying realization. The story was unraveling. I had done something it hadn't predicted. The world around me distorted, the walls shifting like ink bleeding through parchment. The air smelled of damp paper and something rotting. The shadow was chasing me, its elongated limbs dragging across the walls, warping reality with every movement. I had to end this. And I knew exactly where to go. I ran through the empty streets, gripping the manuscript with white-knuckled hands. There was only one place where this had started. Only one place where it could end. Bellamy's bookstore. I didn't stop running, not even when the shadows slithered beneath the streetlights, not even when my vision blurred at the edges. Bellamy had told me the manuscript was a trap, that it wanted me to keep reading. If I could destroy it, if I could erase the story, maybe I could break free. Maybe I could rewrite my fate. I stumbled into the bookstore, slamming the door shut behind me. The once cozy space was now eerily quiet, bookshelves looming like silent witnesses. The air smelled of dust and ink. I wasted no time. I grabbed the nearest stack of books, tossing them into a pile. My hands shook as I pulled a lighter from my pocket. Fire. That was the only way to erase words permanently. I flicked the lighter open, the small flame casting long, flickering shadows. The manuscript twitched in my hands as if it knew. And for the first time, new words formed. But not on the pages. They etched themselves into my skin. You will burn the book, but you will burn with it. I gritted my teeth. Then so be it. With a deep breath, I threw the manuscript into the pile of books and dropped the flame. The fire roared to life. Pages curled and blackened. Ink melted into nothingness. A scream erupted, not from me, but from the book itself. The shadows convulsed, twisting violently as the manuscript fought back. Pain lashed through me. My skin burned with invisible fire, the cursed words searing into my flesh. But I didn't stop. I watched as the manuscript crumbled, its final pages turning to ash. The shadow let out one last, deafening wail, eh. And then, silence. The bookstore shuddered. And then the world went still. I opened my eyes, coughing against the thick smoke. The fire had burned itself out, leaving behind nothing but a pile of scorched paper. The manuscript was gone. I waited, my breath shallow. But no new words appeared. The story was over. I was free. I stumbled out of the bookstore, my body aching, my mind reeling. The night air was crisp against my sweat-drenched skin. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the world was quiet. No shadows loomed. No whispers in the dark. I had one. A shaky breath left my lips. Then, for the first time in days, I smiled. The night air was crisp, the city quiet. My breath curled in the cold as I stood outside the bookstore, staring at the charred remains of the manuscript. The fire had done its job. The cursed pages were nothing more than ash now, scattered across the wooden floor. And yet, a gnawing unease still lingered in my chest. Something felt unfinished. I should have felt relief, maybe even victory. Instead, I felt like a character who had reached the end of their book only to find the last page missing. I took a shaky breath and walked away. I returned to my apartment just as the sky began to lighten. My body ached with exhaustion, my mind still buzzing with what had happened. I half expected to see shadows waiting in the corners, to hear the rustle of unseen pages whispering my fate. But there was nothing. Just silence. I stood in the middle of my living room, running a hand over my face. Maybe it was really over. Maybe I had broken free. I needed sleep. Dragging myself to my bedroom, I collapsed onto the mattress, my eyes already drifting shut. And that was when I saw it. A single sheet of paper lying on my nightstand. My heart stuttered. I hadn't put anything there. Dread coiled in my stomach as I reached for it with trembling fingers. The paper was old, the edges slightly curled, the ink dark and familiar. There were only 5 words written on it. The story is not over. I bolted upright, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement. But I was alone. I clutched the note, my hands shaking. No, this wasn't possible. The manuscript was gone. Burned. Destroyed. Unless... I hesitated, then turned the page over. More words appeared before my eyes as if they were being written in real time. He will think he is free. But a story does not end when a book is destroyed. A story lingers. A story waits. I dropped the paper like it had burned me. My pulse pounded in my ears. This wasn't over. Somehow the manuscript had survived. Panic settled in like a weight on my chest. I needed answers. Bellamy had warned me about the manuscript. He had known something. I had to find him. I grabbed my jacket and rushed out the door, my thoughts spiraling. The city was just waking up, the streets quiet in the early morning light. The sun was rising, painting the sky in soft hues of orange and pink. But to me, the world still felt wrong. I reached the bookstore within minutes, only to find it gone. The windows were dark. The sign above the door had been removed, leaving behind faint outlines where the letters had once been. Dust covered the glass. It was as if the shop had been abandoned for years. I stepped forward, pressing my hands against the door. It didn't budge. My breath hitched. This didn't make sense. I had been here just hours ago. I had set the manuscript on fire right inside this building. Had the story rewritten reality itself? Had I erased Bellamy along with the book? I stumbled back, heart hammering. No, this wasn't happening. I wasn't trapped. I couldn't be trapped. And then, the words appeared. Not on paper. Not in a book. But right in front of my eyes. He will search for answers. But the only answer is the truth. He is still inside the story. The world shifted. The sky darkened as if someone had smeared ink across it. The buildings around me flickered, dissolving into nothingness. And I realized with a sickening sense of dread. I had never escaped. The manuscript had never been destroyed. I was still inside it. The final chapter was still being written. And I was running out of time. The world twisted around me. The city faded, dissolving like wet ink bleeding through paper. My breath came in short, panicked gasps as I stumbled backward, but there was nowhere to go, only an expanse of nothingness stretching endlessly in all directions. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. I clenched my fists, feeling the cool paper of the note still crumpled in my palm. The words on it stared back at me, unchanging, final. He is still inside the story. A hollow laugh bubbled up in my throat. It was absurd, like a cruel joke played by some unseen author. I had burned the manuscript. I had done everything to escape. And yet here I was. A character in a book that refused to end. A new page appeared before me, materializing in midair, its edges curling like parchment untouched by time. The ink began to write itself, an unseen hand scrawling the words across the page. He will refuse to accept his fate. He will try to fight it. But the story is stronger than him. I swallowed hard. No, I whispered. I won't let this happen. The ink continued to flow, ignoring my defiance. He will seek an escape. But the truth remains, there is no escape from the written word. A shiver crawled up my spine. My fingers twitched. Then a terrible thought struck me. If I was still inside the story, then someone was still writing it. The realization hit like a thunderclap. There had to be an author. A force beyond my control, shaping my fate with every turn of the page. And if that was true, then maybe I wasn't powerless after all. Maybe I could find them. Maybe I could rewrite the ending myself. I clenched my jaw and turned my gaze to the void around me. Who's writing this? I demanded, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. Silence. Then, the world trembled. A sound, like 1,000 pages fluttering at once, echoed through the emptiness. And in the distance, something took shape. A desk. A chair. A silhouette hunched over parchment. A quill scratching against the surface. The author. My heart pounded. This was it. I took a step forward. And the words appeared again. He will reach for the author. But he will never truly grasp the pen. I ignored them. Another step. The figure remained still, writing furiously. The sound of ink against paper filled the air. Relentless. Consuming. I took another step. And the figure lifted its head. I stopped breathing. It was me. The author was me. I stared at my own face, hollow-eyed, gaunt, as if I had been writing for an eternity without rest. My doppelganger blinked slowly, pen hovering above the page. You can't stop, the other me said. His voice was my own but warped, distant. The story has to finish. I shook my head. No, I won't let it. I lunged forward, reaching for the manuscript in front of him. But the moment my fingers touched the paper, pain lanced through me, sharp and cold. I gasped, clutching my chest. The ink on the manuscript dripped, shifting, reforming into new words. He will try to seize control. But the story has already claimed him. The doppelganger's eyes darkened. You were never the writer, he whispered. You were always the written. The words struck like a knife to the gut. And deep inside, I knew he was right. I had never been in control. The moment I picked up the manuscript in Bellamy's store, I had become part of it, a character doomed to follow the script. And now the final lines were being written. I could feel it. The ending. My ending. I looked down at the manuscript, the last words forming before my eyes. He will understand too late. A sharp pain tore through me. The ink bled into my skin. And then, everything went dark. The book sat on the dusty shelf, untouched by time. Its title, barely visible through the worn leather cover, read, The Cursed Manuscript. Inside, the pages were full, complete story. And at the very end, written in bold, unchangeable ink, the end.